In a little over 4 weeks' time, AFC Bournemouth play their second pre-season game at Dean Court, but it's one with quite some significance. Of course, our first pre-season game at Dean Court is against Italian side Atalanta, but the second one is against the League One side who have done very, very well of late, and that side is FC Lorient. Now, of course, two different leagues. You would expect that both clubs don't really care much about each other, um, but you're wrong because FC Lorient fans don't particularly like AFC Bournemouth. In fact, you could say from some of the comments on Twitter, they hate us. What I want to do is go into a bit more detail in this video about this new rivalry that has sprung up and why, and what benefits that this model could have for both clubs, not just AFC Bournemouth. So, bear with me, Lorient fans. I know that you're not particularly happy with our football club, but we'll go into greater detail. So, of course, last season, in the middle of the World Cup, AFC Bournemouth were purchased by Bill Foley and his Black Knight Investment Group. Now, the Black Knight Group also decided a little bit later on to make a purchase in FC Lorient. That stake is rumoured to be around about 33%. Of course, Bill Foley did mention at that time that AFC Bournemouth would effectively be a parent club and that the two sides would be able to transfer players between each other. Now, where did it all go a little bit sour? Well, of course, AFC Bournemouth signed Dango Ouattara from FC Lorient for around about the £25 million mark. FC Lorient fans, it's fair to say, were not happy with this. Ouattara had been fantastic for them. Now, FC Lorient fans have really said some nasty stuff about relegation, liquidation, administration of this football club, that they hope that we disappear back into the League Two days. It's a bit harsh stuff. FC Bournemouth fans, of course, can sympathise with our French counterparts. Now, why is there so much fear? Now, of course, Bill Foley only owns 33% of FC Lorient. Now, of course, FC Lorient are actually owned by Loic Ferry. So he owns the rest of the football club. So Bill Foley can't do exactly what he wants. He can't just transfer players between each club. But of course, there is a big say. And of course, there is money on the table. Now, the reason why a multi-club scheme does sometimes annoy fans of other clubs in other countries is because of the wealth of the Premier League. Now, outside of the NFL and Major League Baseball, the Premier League is the richest competition in the world. There is amounted to revenues, and this is going back a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. The revenues was around about 5.7 billion in the Premier League. Now, quite a lot of that is siphoned off into the lower leagues, so the Championship, League One, League Two, and below as well, the grassroots of the game. But the French league, in comparison, is a fifth of what the Premier League is worth. Now, of course, you do have big clubs in France. You've got the likes of PSG and Lyon, who, have been successful over a number of years. However, what hopes does FC Lorient have of breaking that? Well, on the surface of it, probably not much. What hopes have AFC Bournemouth got of breaking the likes of Manchester City, Man United, Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool? Again, not much. However, a multi-club approach does sometimes work. And that has been shown by Manchester City themselves. Now, Manchester City own a number of entities outside of the Premier League. Of course, one of those most successful entities is in the MLS, and that is New York City. Now, that side acts as a feeder side for Manchester City, but also it works the other way round as well. Now, FC Lorient don't have an endless pot of gold. Likewise, AFC Bournemouth don't. But by working together, the two clubs could enhance both positions. Now, of course, FC Lorient have only seen it one way round. That Dango Ouattara left Lorient to come to AFC Bournemouth. And of course, they weren't particularly very happy with it. They were asking for Bill Foley to leave and, demanding that they get their club back. But Bill Foley isn't going anywhere from FC Lorient. But it will work in the long run. And it's not just for Bournemouth. Hear me out, Lorient fans. I know you're probably seething, you're probably hating me at this moment in time. You probably hate our club even more. But AFC Bournemouth are going to be building an academy at Camford Magna. Now that academy, is in the scope of course, Southampton. And therefore, there is a lot of talent that will come from around the local area. This area has brought through some really, really decent players like Adam Lallana and Danny Ings and players like that. This football club have been successful without an academy. Now, once we do get up to a stage one academy, which hopefully is sooner rather than later, what that will mean is any youngsters could then go to Lorient. But it's not just that. Lorient fans, don't think that we probably send you just our youngsters. What could also happen, though, is there could be a scheme where AFC Bournemouth might help Lorient by, if they're unable to purchase a said player, Bournemouth could do that for them and then loan that player out. This has worked before, and this has worked with a team in the English pyramid in Watford. Of course, Watford are owned by the Pozzo Group. Now, say what you like about Watford and their ever-changing managers, but what they do have is they have that scheme in place, and it has proved successful. They are in the Championship, of course, we know, but the two clubs work together, and they have both benefited from that relationship. Of course, Bill Foley's multi-club model isn't going to end there. What he wants to do is he wants to build a whole network of football clubs who could feed into AFC Bournemouth. But also, by feeding into AFC Bournemouth, that doesn't mean that those clubs are neglected or forgotten about. That means that those clubs are going to be made richer by AFC Bournemouth pumping money into those football clubs. Look at Dango Ouattara, the fee that we paid for him, and also look at the sort of schemes that have been done by other clubs in the past. It's all positive. It's not negative, but I can understand why Lorient fans feel like that. With this multi-club model, hopefully both clubs will be successful. Hopefully both clubs can work with each other, and hopefully, if, say, for example, there is a player who wants to play in France, then that player is more likely to go to Lorient than anywhere else. Like I say, Bill Foley hasn't bought a stake in Lorient for it to go into Liga 2. What he's bought a stake in the football club for is for it to be successful, for it to bloom, and for it to benefit from this model. That is my personal view on it. Of course, we'll see throughout time, and there has been nightmare multi-club models in the past. You only need to ask fans of Reading, for example, who were set up in this multi-club model as the parent club, and two of the clubs have gone under. But that is a very, very different chairman to the owner of AFC Bournemouth. That owner, for example, is currently under a lot of scrutiny. Reading haven't paid a HMRC bill. And the thing is with that owner doesn't follow the same sort of model that Bill Foley is. Bill Foley has been successful in everything he does. He's not rash. He's sensible. He speaks to footballing people. We've got good footballing people here. And therefore, this will profit. So forget the nightmare scenarios that you've heard about multi-club models. What I know that Bill Foley will look to do is to make both clubs very, very successful, not just now, but in the long run. Hopefully, it could be the start of a blossoming friendship outside of this hatred that unfortunately has evolved from one side, really, as it sounds at the moment. Of course, Twitter only amounts for a small amount of fans, and that doesn't mean that other fans, off Twitter don't feel a little bit differently about it, that maybe that they were happy about this. Maybe they aren't. We can't tell from fans who aren't on social media or aren't vocal. But at the same time, I hope Lorient are successful. I hope whichever other clubs that Bill Foley does have a stake in are successful. And I hope AFC Bournemouth is successful. And I hope that even though it might not feel like it at the moment, that a good, positive relationship comes of the two clubs.